What's going on, everybody? Welcome in to the Sun Belt Syndicate, proudly sponsored by collegefootballdogs.com, part of the Dogs Media Network. Big story just broke as far as football is concerned. For those of you who haven't heard, which is probably very few of you, but some of you may not have heard yet, that Jim Harbaugh has been hired officially by the Los Angeles Chargers, and College Football Dogs were the first outlet to report it. So big shout out and thank you to our contributors, all our guys in the background who've done a lot of work to get that story out and take care of the details along the way as best they could. There's a whole lot of leads on that one. You never knew where it was going. So great job by the team to follow through on that and get that out to a lot of those Charger fans. I know a lot of them are happy that is finally over. They are going to do a live show from the LA Chargers practice facility tomorrow night, streaming everywhere. Follow College Football Dogs across all the social platforms. You'll be able to find that quite easily. For those of you who are both NCAA football, because it still has to do with that a little bit with Michigan being involved, but certainly pro football fans, which I know there are good and plenty of as far as Sun Belt followers go in this group as well. I want to say hi to Dylan. He's already gave us a shout there. And this man right here, Preston, he'll be on here in a few minutes, I think. We'll add him up in the background. But we are presented by W Energy. Before we get rolling along too fast, enter the promo code below, or if you're listening, the promo code at checkout will be SB Sunbelt, SB Syndicate. No spaces, no capitalization or lowercase. It doesn't matter either way. As long as you have SB Syndicate at checkout, that will show our affiliate what we are bringing in there. That is a powdered energy drink, no caffeine, no sugar crash, all what you put into it, just like Kool-Aid. Again, a little bit less, a little bit more, depending on your flavor preference. But that is who our presenting sponsor is so far. Let's see if Preston gets added up in the meantime. He says he's here, but he's not backstage. So Preston, if you're listening, jump in backstage again with the link I sent you, and we'll get you added to the show here as we go along. For the meantime, I will throw up our little presentation we've got here. As we've gone through, we know we have some live games. Well, I guess they're all over now. The hope for tonight's episode was to get the live games done before we went live. Which has happened. It was barely happening, but it did happen. So we were able to get that done. We were also able to update the standings, or I was also able to work the background and update the standings before we get too far into that. Let's see if I can work Preston in here. Trying to get him added to the show. We'll see when he jumps in because he's got some important things to talk about. I did want to mention how he's a big softball guy. And for those of you who are James Madison fans or just Sun Belt softball fans, the plan for me was to do a baseball highlighted show, right? Just like we've done for football, just like we're doing now for basketball, obviously. I wanted to do the same thing for baseball in a video form as we went along. And he had contacted me. He's a great writer, by the way. If you haven't checked out some of his stuff, he wrote some JMU articles along the way during football season. He says he'll be in just a minute, hopefully. But he wrote some great articles on JMU football, obviously with what they went through before making a bowl game. Ultimately, we know that there was a process that had to occur for that. But he did a great job covering that aspect for those JMU fans, and definitely a big softball contributor and somebody that wants to help in that regard. And I said, that's great because I don't really know anything about softball. I don't really know a ton about baseball, to be honest with you, but I like watching it and I like following along. So hopefully as a team, we can get that covered for you guys pretty well and at least give you some video aspect to go with what you're watching on the field and keeping up to date. So until Preston jumps in here, we'll go ahead and move on to some of the scores from Saturday first, because I had some stuff I was going to go over before that anyway. So we had two close games, but one a little bit closer than the other. First, we had Southern Miss versus Troy. Crowley Hart and Curbelo all out, or Curbelo, I'm sorry. So this one looked like, why not Troy taking this one, right? With those three players out, there should be no reason that Troy doesn't win this game. And Troy also took the first matchup by 26 points just a few weeks ago. So I don't even know if it was 2 full weeks ago at this point. Easily won that one. So 3 less players, and it didn't work out for them. They still couldn't pull out the victory. Let me try and get Preston in here. Copy this thing again and send it over to him. He says he's having a little trouble, so just want to be up front with what's going on in the background as we try and get this done. Here we go. All right. Hopefully we can get this cleaned up and get going in a better format for you guys here. So, Crowley in that one, they were down 18 points with 13:52 left in the game, but somehow Southern Miss cut it really, really close to within, I think, 7, within just a few minutes of that. So they had it in a reasonable aspect, which didn't look like they were going to get right away before the end point of the game, which a lot of times when you're battling back from a deficit like that, you're battling every inch all the way down to the wire, and you don't get it close enough and you fall in the end. They battled back much more quickly than we often see, and so they got it in a realistic time frame where much more manageable. They may have gotten away with a little bit of a goaltend on one end, and then possibly a walk or travel at the other end. Iwaku was a beast down there, but looked like maybe that one should have gone another way. Anyways, Troy still had a chance to win it with a buzzer beater at the end, but they go down ultimately 64-63 in that one. So USM gets a little revenge. Arkansas State and Texas State, the first matchup went to the Red Wolves 85-82, and the Red Wolves are the best three-point shooting team in the league. They were 11 of 31 in this one. So not only do they make a pretty good amount, they take a ton of threes as well. Although I will say in the end, not quite as close as the score indicates in this one. You see it's only 7-point difference there, but it felt way further apart than that. There was a lot of timeouts and fouls towards the end, but it never really got all that close. But from the outside, you look at it and say it was probably a little bit of a closer score. The Cajuns went up against South Alabama. Kentinge grabs a double-double with 17 points and 11 boards, but Julian leads the team with 24 points overall. Jags had 2 players with 20 points apiece, Ormiston and Gator. Ormiston with 23 and Gator with 25, and almost the most in the game, but it wasn't quite enough as the Cajuns win that one 88-79. Marshall and James Madison, a game that was much bigger at this time last year. JMU a clear favorite this time around, but a tight battle at the half with JMU leading just 32-29. Kerfman goes for 23, but Connor doesn't have a great day. 0 for 10 from the field and not enough help from the bench. They just didn't get enough production from the bench to overcome that. Friedel and Edwards led the Dukes with 14 and 20 respectively, and JMU takes that one 67-52. App State versus Coastal, the chance bright spot was John Ojako's double-double, but otherwise a dominant performance from the Mountaineers in this one. The Mountaineers had 3 starters in double figures and 3 that came off the bench also in double figures. As a team, they shot 40% from 3 with Harcum, Mantis, and Huntley leading the way. App wins that one pretty easily, 88-59. I realize I'm not jumping over to those scores, so here we go there. Georgia Southern gets revenge on Georgia State with a 86-70 win down there in Statesboro. The Panthers won by almost 30 points just about a week ago. Taylor and Tucker led the Panthers in scoring, but it wasn't enough as the Eagles had 4 players in double figures, led by Bryant with 19 points. The biggest difference in this one, though, 3-point shooting, as the Eagles went for over 53%, while the Panthers shot below 27% themselves. So good revenge there for Georgia Southern as they get back on the board. That's a little bit of you never want to lose to that team, right? So that one is almost even both way now when you add the scores from both sides. Interesting aspect to that. Be great to see those two teams lock up in Sunbelt tournament action as well to continue that rivalry. Fitting game to end it all here, as it was the battle for the basement. ULM, solid first half, held on to the 80-73 victory. The Sunbelt's leading scorer, Alette, goes for 17 points, but only 1 of 5 from three-point land. Willis has a game for the Warhawks with 12 boards, 14 points, but LaCour turns it on for 20 points himself to lead ULM out of the basement as they jump over ODU for now. But let's talk about what happened on the court tonight. We had Troy taking down Texas State in what was expected to happen, I guess, 78-65. The Trojans take that one over the Bobcats. Again, not really a huge surprise there. Brandon Love has been a pretty good player for the Bobcats, but only has 9.7 boards tonight. Meanwhile, Rigsby for Troy leads away with 20 points, 9 rebounds, and 3 steals to help Troy get back into their winning ways. James Madison has already played ODU in a non-conference matchup before the season ever started. They play them again tonight and win that one 78-62 over the Monarchs. As we spoke about just a second ago, the Monarchs in the basement thus far and not getting any help by JMU beating them once again tonight at home there in Norfolk. A little bit closer of a game this time around, but unfortunately for the Monarchs, couldn't come up with the W in that one. Looks like Alette did lead ODU with 15 points and 6 boards. Wooden went off for 23 points for James Madison. Marshall beats Georgia State 77-68. This one was more of a toss-up for me. Marshall had been on a 3-game losing streak recently, and Georgia State's been a little bit better than expected, or right where people had expected them, I guess. So this one was definitely a toss-up to me. A very close game at the half, just a 1-point difference, with Georgia State actually taking the lead into halftime, but Marshall explodes in that second half. Anochili killing for 22 points, 6 rebounds. Odom goes for 21 points for Georgia State, as he was pretty much one of their better players last year and looks to lead the team again this season as well. Southern Miss takes their game over Coastal Carolina 79-63 down there in Conway, South Carolina. Ivory, after a big game this past weekend, has another one with 28 points to lead the Golden Eagles. Almost said Warhawks. I don't know how I got those two almost confused. Easley leads the way for Coastal with 18 points, but again, Coastal struggling there. Let's take a look at, again, these are updated standings. I did have time to update these standings and how teams are looking going into this one. So we have App State up there at the top as they held on to win this past week and go to 6-1 in conference, 15-4 overall, a 4-game win streak. They are riding into tomorrow night's matchup. And since we are talking about that, let's get those matchups up real quick to remind us what we're looking at there. They go up against Georgia Southern there at Holmes Convocation Center in Boone. Not the biggest of matchups with where Georgia Southern is and obviously where they were coming into the season, but they're still winning record in conference. Even though they were winless outside of the conference, they've come into this conference play and won 4 games. Pretty impressive, if you ask me, all right? Because before conference play started, you're asking yourself where this team could end up. I did think they could get up to the middle of the pack. One of those things where you've got we got an ad for it. So sorry about that. Little action from the website I'm using. But anyway, getting back to it, Georgia Southern, again, impressing me because of the way they've turned it around. And I knew that was a possibility with what they had to deal with coming into the season, a new coach, some new players, a new system that they're getting used to. If you go back and really look at some of those scores too, a little bit closer than what people may think. I mean, some of those games they did get kind of blown out, like Michigan State. But then there's other games where they held on. I guess Jacksonville, if I remember off the top of my head, is one of them. Very close game. They actually shot very well from 3. I think it was that game. Very well from 3-point range in that one. But Jacksonville was just a little bit better that night and took the victory. So it wasn't a team that was far away from winning some of those games. So they could have probably come into the conference with 3 or 4 wins respectively, just a few minor tweaks in some of those games. So it wasn't that they were winless and hopeless. They were just winless. They did have some hope, and obviously we've seen that now with 4 wins in conference play. As we continue down here, Southern Miss also climbs up the standings a little bit, now 6-2, 12-8 overall, as well as James Madison. However, their overall record jumps to 18-2. They face a big matchup this weekend with App State. However, App State, as we just talked about, still has some business to take care of Thursday night to come in with a little bit of an unblemished record themselves. But those two teams we just mentioned, both on 3 games win streaks themselves, they'll carry those two into Saturday's games. Whereas, again, App State will have to prove that they're still on their winning ways before they get into that one. Following them up, we've got Troy, who dropped down a bit, obviously, and then again with tonight's game as well. Now 6-2, 12-8 in the conference, or 12-8 overall, 6-2 in the conference. So really, you've got a lot of tightly contested games and teams up there towards the top, a lot of movement up there towards the top, all the way down to the middle now with what's happened tonight. Marshall with a 5-3 record and 10-11 overall. They ended their 3-game skid. They got back on the winning ways with tonight's victory. The Cajuns take a pretty big jump up after last weekend. Now 4-3 in conference, 11-8 overall. This is a team, like I said before, you need to watch out for. South Alabama and them, I thought were kind of getting close to being hot at the same time. Then they matched up with each other, and the Cajuns look to have been continuing that role while the Jags still struggle to try and put it all together. Arkansas State stays in the same place, 4-3, 8-11 overall. Again, Georgia Southern does jump up slightly from where they were this past week. Georgia State goes down below them after tonight's game with 4-4 overall record in conference and 9-10 overall. I think I just said overall twice, but you know what I mean. South Alabama again continues to fall. And then we've got 4 teams towards the bottom of the pack. ULM does jump up now, especially after tonight's game, and goes up above Texas State, who drops to 1-6 and 7-12 overall. Coastal down there. ODU continues to fall, 1-7 in conference, 5-12 overall. Not going to be the shocking surprise team like I thought they would this season coming in. And well, you don't get them all right? I thought, really looking at last year, what ODU was capable of and how many times they played people very close, I thought they could do that same thing again this year. That was not to be the case. So unfortunate there. Jumping over to the women's side real quick, we've got the standings updated for them as well. So you can see this one's vastly different from the men's side. We had a lot of movement at the top of the men's and a little bit at the bottom. The women's movement has all been right in the middle of the pack where everyone's tightly packed together. So it's fun in that regard, but not a lot of movement at the top. At this point now, you're starting to see the separation, right? You're starting to see the best teams in this conference on the women's side continue to be that, and the teams at the bottom continue to struggle. I thought Texas State was one of those ones before, like a week ago. Their overall record was still pretty good. They just struggled to play in conference games for whatever reason, and I thought that was an aspect of what they were doing that could translate and turn the corner for them in conference play and hopefully lead to bigger and better things for them. That has not been the case. So that's one I wanted to make mention of right now. Georgia Southern also, I think they were as high as 3 or 4 just a week or so ago. They continue to lose here recently. In fact, they are on a 4-game losing streak. So that's why you're going to drop so much in the standings there. But they have some talented players. They might not stay there for long, but they do have to get some things rectified as they drop 4 straight games, one of them tonight to Georgia State, as the Panthers win that one 74-66. Henderson has 20 points for the Panthers. Booker has 13, for the Eagles in that one. And in the only other game in women's action, we had 4 games on the men's side. We only had 2 games on the women's side. Marshall takes that one 77-70 over JMU, a battle towards the top of the conference. Obviously, the record would still favor Marshall even if they had lost, but James Madison technically would jump them because they would have had the head-to-head record. And so Yeah, that was a great matchup tonight. Obviously, it didn't go the Duke's way. Bristow has 11 points, 8 rebounds. Campbell goes for 19 points, 7 assists. That new coach there in Huntington has done a great job turning the women's program around. Not that they were struggling tremendously anyways, but definitely making them a top team to beat in the conference thus far. Going up and looking at another impressive team this season, ULM has jumped way up in the standings. Now 5-2 in conference, 13-5 overall. I'm going to see off the top of my head. I didn't remember where they were at, but they have won 4 straight games, and that'll do it for you. Big jump up for the Warhawks on the ladies' side with those 4 straight wins. And we've got, I guess, to touch on that, Marshall's also 8 straight victories, and Troy is 6 straight victories for the ladies' side. So definitely some impressive victories there lately on the women's side. A lot of movement, as we said, towards the middle. App State has now won 2 games. They jump up a little bit. ODU, who started off pretty hot, has cooled a little bit here lately, losing 2 straight. So App wins 2 straight. ODU loses 2 straight. And they are real close together right there in the middle of that pack now, both 4-3 in conference with somewhat similar overall records. Definitely ODU's got a little bit stronger out of conference mark at this point in the season. And then we'll cover Arkansas State as they drop a few here. Actually, they are they're on a 2-game win streak. But that tells you where all this movement comes in when they've won 2 straight games, but they're still down. That means they started towards the bottom. And now they're here in the middle, not at the very, very top. But it looks like Preston's still struggling to get in here. I haven't heard from him. I think he might be having some internet issues. But anyway, I wanted to cover something for him because he wasn't able to make it in here tonight. He wanted to stress the importance of mental health, and I think that is a very important thing. And you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to know exactly what you're talking about. But if you could just be there for someone and use the tools and resources available to you, definitely do it. Everybody's going through a little something, right? So if we can all help each other out in little tiny ways, it can still mean a lot to somebody else. What you may think is just a silly text to somebody that you reach out to every so often could mean a lot to them because they needed that little laugh or they needed that little interaction to give them just a little push through the day that they need to know that they matter and somebody cares about them. Do it. Don't question it. Do it. If you have friends you haven't reached out to in a while, reach out to them. Call your parents. All the little things that you think are minute and don't matter, they do. Somebody cares. Somebody wants that interaction. So be sure to do those things throughout the entirety of your life, really. But hopefully a little reminder can all put us in a state of mind where we're thinking about those little things because they add up and they can mean a lot to somebody. So please just focus on that little aspect of your mental health, your friends and your family's mental health, and total strangers, honestly. So yeah, if you see somebody going through something, reach out, man. Reach out. Just talk to them. See what you can do. And I guess we'll talk a little bit about this weekend's matchups. I was hoping Preston was going to be back in here because I proudly wore my my App State stuff tonight. He had his JMU shirt on before we were both on video here discussing stuff before the show got started, but didn't look like it's going to work out. And Ed Harold is coming in saying men's conference rankings are really tight at the top with 4 schools with 6 wins. Yeah, absolutely. Jumping back into that, yeah. The power of the top is good. It's a good thing to have, and it's going to be really, really strong here when we go back against the MAC as well. Hopefully, they come in with a lot of wins on their side, their top teams. I should stress their top teams. We don't really want their middle and bad teams to start beating their top teams. We want their best teams to come in strong. We want our best teams to come in strong so that when we play those games, because those are the only out-of-conference games left for this entire season, we need to win as many of those games with our top teams as possible because a couple of us from the beginning of this season have questioned whether there's a reason or a way for the Sun Belt to have an at-large team. That's going to be very, very difficult to do with the history of this conference. But this season could be possible. JMU's out-of-conference mark was great before they got in here and got beat a few times. App State's out-of-conference mark was great with wins over Auburn and UNCW, who's looking pretty good as well right now. Auburn's up there. I think, what are they ranked 10th? If someone's looking at something at the moment. So yeah, they weren't ranked when App State beat them. So that's going to be a downer for App State to say they didn't have in fact, looking at the AP and USA Today poll, they haven't played a single ranked team as far as that is concerned. But they're still going to get some credit for having beat a team that is now currently ranked. You just don't, unfortunately, have that little tick mark beside your name. Yo Boy Carr says, what's up? What's up, Cajun fan? Glad to have you in here tonight. Don't let the Cajuns get hot. Yeah, I said it before. I mean, look at what this team did last year going into that Sun Belt tournament. They got hot at the right time. South Alabama was another team that got hot at the right time. I'm wondering if a team like Arkansas State could get hot at the right time. Troy, I don't even know what to say about Troy. They don't have like one big dominant big man in the paint that's taking over games. They don't just have one scorer who's doing it on their side, as we've looked at a few times throughout this season already. When we're looking at the top scorers in this conference, Troy's never got somebody on there, but they spread the ball around and they get it done as a team effort. And as mentioned, they very possibly could have won that game at Southern Miss. Again, we throughout college sports in general, and certainly throughout college basketball, there's a magnifying glass on officiating. That one seemed to be a little messy toward the end. I'm not saying they got stuff wrong or right, although I think it was pretty evident and obvious that there was some kind of walk or travel there towards the end that they just missed. The goaltend, I don't know. Again, I'm not a basketball official. I can't say for one way or another where that should or shouldn't have been. It seemed like Troy's bench and players immediately thought it should have been. I don't know if if they're even allowed to take a look at that or whatnot. Ed Harold saying coulda, woulda, yeah. And it's true. You also have to take care of business when you're presented with those opportunities. So not only were the officials, missing some things or not calling things that could have been called, but as Troy, you either have to overcome that and win the game anyway, or as Southern Miss, take advantage of those things, but still have to play well enough to put yourself in those positions. So ultimately, again, it always comes back to you didn't do enough anyway, right? So we can talk about the officials because it's a storyline. It's an aspect that we like to hark on because we as outsiders can't do anything about it. But the guys on the court, on the field, on the rink, whatever it is, sport-wise, if you beat somebody 6-0, it doesn't matter if the officials were bad. If you beat somebody 93-55, it doesn't matter if the officials were bad. You clearly were the better team. So if you don't want question marks, beat somebody by more points, because then little calls don't matter. So yeah, you could say all those things. Yo Boy Carr saying y'all should do a Sunbelt softball episode. Would be a fun episode. Yeah. Well, I was hoping to have Preston on here tonight because he's a big softball guy. He's going to be doing some writing, I think, for College Baseball Dogs, which is a new website that we're going to be launching here soon. I think February 1st is the aim and the goal and the hope. And so anybody who wants to contribute with us and become a writer for us on that aspect, please reach out because we're trying to do some baseball coverage. I will do as much of the conference as I can, but there's not going to be articles for every game or every series. I can tell you that. It's just too much with 14 teams. But I will do as much coverage as I can, probably more of this type of thing than the writing overall. You just got to be shows put a little bit of time to put together with your notes, graphics, the structure of the thing when you're trying to have guests, which again didn't work out tonight. But when you're trying to do those things, you have to give yourself a proper amount of time. So I will be doing as much of that as possible, and we will definitely be covering some softball. I did not cover any softball last year when I just did the audio only. Now that we've got the video, we can clearly put up some graphics and some things for people to look at that's going to be a little bit more interesting than hearing me talk the entire time. So I'm thankful that we had some more people jumping in the comments tonight. Again, disappointed that we couldn't get Preston to work out and jumping on. But I will tell you and remind you once again about College Football Dogs, the podcast show. Pod, dog, paw. I don't know if I can spell that out anymore or any worse than I just did, but they are going live from the LA Chargers practice facility tomorrow to talk about the Harbaugh hire out there for the Chargers. Big NFL news, big NCAA news, because now is there a shuffle of coaches across the landscape with Michigan. I think Sherrod Moore is the guy, or Sherrod Moore, how you pronounce his first name. He's believed to be the guy for Michigan. I think it was pretty obvious from the start there if Harbaugh were to leave that he was going to be the guy. I mean, he was the guy when Harbaugh was suspended. looks like he's going to be the guy here now too. But is there any further shuffling? Does he do stuff with his staff and create an opening here or there at some other locations? As we've seen, we've got some player movement in football as well with Texas State and what they went through today. You know, TJ Finley had left, Deloria come on, and now he's gone. So all kinds of things to continue cover. We will do the football show. I think we're thinking of something like every 2 weeks. That gives us a little bit more time and structure to put some things together. TJ and I really want to give a quality product and not just force something every week just to be in front of y'all. So we want to focus on something you guys care and want to watch. So we're going to do something more like that than worry about just trying to get in front of you every single week. So we want to make sure we have some things to talk about before we go live with all you guys. But I think that about wraps it up for tonight. We like to keep these short and sweet with the basketball coverage. As we get deeper and closer to March Madness, we definitely will be doing a little bit longer, a little bit more intricate stuff. But this is mainly to keep everybody up to speed. Again, weekdays are hard to watch all the games, keep up with where everything's headed. This was a cool aspect. I will be traveling to the App State versus James Madison basketball game this weekend, Friday night. That's why this show was moved here to Wednesday. So definitely wanted to get out ahead of the things. It was kind of cool to go over some almost live scores and standings movements tonight for everybody to get a hold of. And next time we will certainly have a cleaner, crisper show when we figure out all this stuff in the background before we go live. But again, thank you to everybody who came along, commented, watched the show. Again, sponsored by W Energy down below, SB Syndicate at checkout. Hit up that affiliate link, collegefootballdogs.com. There is an article to go along with the Harbaugh news. Go check that out. TJ Chapman, a great writer for us behind the scenes, has done a lot of work to keep us up to date on that. Launched that article as soon as that announcement went live. Done a lot of great work. Definitely go give that a read. And again, follow along with all kinds of college football coverage as we continue on during the off season to provide you some of the best coverage you can find. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time.